All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode number 9 of the Whitey and Wilson Show. It is Sunday, November 7th. We're recording on a Sunday night tonight, breaking a little bit of our cycle from our usual Monday morning recordings, but we're going to record on Sunday night, November 7th, and we have got a special episode tonight. We've got, first of all, our first repeat guest is Larry Wilson is joining us again, but also sitting to Larry's right is the one and only Greg Sapp, and we are going to have us a nice little remember when episode. So Mike, I know Mike Wilson, I think you've got a little bit of a vision for this episode this week. So why don't you take it away and tell us what we're going to be doing this week?
We're just improving our vision so we can see. There's a big dialogue box in front of your face. Now we can see. Well, with basketball season ready to start, and we talked about having the girls coaches in one time and then move the boys here in the Effingham, St. Anthony, T-Town trifecta. Would give them kind of another week of practice where they could give us some more meaningful stuff. And so Bill Murray was hanging out backstage still, the constant guest from Letterman. So we thought, what better way to kick off basketball season than to bring two people that have probably seen more basketball games maybe than anybody around here. I don't know, maybe not. But I thought maybe they could reminisce about some of their days in their gyms. And you and I both know them quite well. So, we can ask them pointed questions without being concerned.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Larry, Greg, do you guys, I don't even know, do you guys have any good stories about basketball or not?
There's one or two.
Well, take it away, Mike. Ask a question. Get us started here.
All right. Well, you guys work together. Greg, when did you start helping with basketball? About 78, 79?
77, 78 season was the first full-time season. I'd done a few games for a couple of years before that. But 77, 78 was the first year that it was Larry and Greg.
So that lasted until 04?
And then
04. People don't realize that's been 17 years ago either. They asked me things like, boy, we miss you on the radio. I said, well, how long do you think it's been since I was on there? Well, at least 5-6 years. Yeah, 17. So a lot of basketball's been played since then. I haven't seen a lot of games, but I get in a few every winter too.
we try to bring him back when we can. It's at least an annual event, but he's nice enough to help other times. If there's a situation where Whitey or Wilson or Matt can't be there, then Larry has helped us out. Nights where we have two locations going, and it's a big help, and it's a blast for me to get to do a game, because that's one of my favorite stories, that we never got to do a final game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Did I explain? Well,
yeah, go for it.
One of those seasons where we knew, well, this team was playing here and this team was playing there. And we all knew by then that that was going to be Larry's last season. And he said, well, I'll do this game. And I said, oh, I'll do this game. And we knew that one of those teams that we were following was going to win. So we knew there'd be another last game. Well, then they both got beat. And that was the end of the season. And so we never got to do a last game.
Finale.
So now, through the years now, when Larry's come back and been nice enough to help, we've tried to make that happen. But that's one of the things I regret the most, is that we never got to do a last game together.
Now, Dustin, I may have a recording of their last game. If it happened, well, it wouldn't have been. It would not have been the St. Anthony Dietrich game in the regional that year, that went the thriller that went into overtime, that somehow got into overtime. I actually, for some reason, someone at the station recorded that game that night. And if I ever use my old iPod to mow with, I'll listen to that, from the middle of the fourth quarter, early fourth quarter on, while I'm mowing. And it's hilarious knowing the outcome of the game, and like the foreshadowing these guys are throwing into their broadcast that they really didn't know they were throwing into the broadcast. So It was one of their last. Obviously, it wasn't their last because they would have done the regional championship and then gone beyond possibly. But somewhere I still have that game.
Do you,
Some
do you
people,
no,
some
go ahead.
people-
Go ahead.
some people back in the day, nowadays, Greg, I'm sure they tape just about every game, or at least get it on tape and have it. But back in the day, we didn't do that years ago. However, parents would take a little mini tape recorder and stick it up in front of the radio and maybe tape their son's games.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of people have told me that they have a recording of a certain game when a Neoga played a St. Anthony or something, and say, hey, do you remember that night? No. Well, my mom has it on tape. We still have that tape of that game that was in 1977 or something like that, you know. So there are scattered recordings out there earlier, but they belong to the family, so to speak. And they're not, we didn't have them at the station or anything like that. But nowadays they record just about everything.
Let me ask you this. Okay, we're talking about the last game, but do you happen to remember first thing you guys did together?
Oh, not offhand. Greg helped a lot. Was it the Charleston tournament? Maybe you helped some originally.
Sometime around that time.
Yeah.
Stan Richardson was Larry's basketball sidekick. What a great man. Sorry, we lost Stan a few years back, but
Yeah.
just a great guy. And he and Larry had a great rapport. And Stan finally, when his daughters got old enough that they got into school, something that Dustin is starting to understand, that he wanted to step aside and spend time with his girls. And he did. And it was a great decision. And it was great for me because I got a lot more opportunities then. So thank you, Stan. And Larry was kind enough to indulge me because I wasn't very good at the start, and I hope I'm a little better. And we had two tournaments going on then. One, the Charleston Christmas tournament, which was a wonderful tournament, and the Heartland Classic, which was played at Effingham High School. So we typically did games from both those venues. So Larry'd go one place, and nice man that he is, he drove to Charleston and did the Charleston games, and he let me stay at home with Effingham. And that way I didn't have to worry about the drive, phone lines, all the rest. And that's where we really got rolling about that time. That would have been the middle 70s.
Greg, Greg helped, and back in maybe Greg knows exactly when girls basketball really began to pop. They played a few years, and we didn't do any girls games because, well, obviously at the start of girls basketball around here, when it really got going, crowds were pretty slim. And so we debated whether or not to start broadcasting girls basketball or not, because obviously it was beginning to really explode. And fortunately, there were some good teams around with Totopolis and Effingham in the early days had fantastic teams, and St. Anthony. And so we decided to do 2 or 3 girls games a year, just to one for each city, maybe just to put it on the radio and get them started, you know. Mm-hmm. Well, I was doing 3 boys games a week, usually Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday, or 2 at least. And so I said, Greg, you need to be more involved in play-by-play. And I said, would you like to do the girls games, calling play-by-play for the girls games? And Greg said, sure. You know, he would like to do that and give him more experience and kind of lighten my load just a little bit, because with girls playing on Mondays and Thursdays, you can see what a week that would be if you decided to do several games. So Greg got into the girls games and kind of like on his own. And I can't remember who you took with you to help you broadcast, but
Cast of thousands.
But anyway, we really dove into girls basketball heavy, and that was about the time T-Town was winning state tournaments. So we had a great following, and Greg grabbed the girls side of it and just ran with it and turned it into really, really a special part of our broadcast season. Basketball season was a girls action. And I remember Greg went to the Bloomington to the state tournament.
Mhm.
T-Town was going every year, and some of the other girls were getting to the state. And anyway, Greg took the girls segment and really ran with it. And then once in a while we'd have, like he said, 2 games or 2 tournaments, and then we'd both be on the air at the same time. And so it really got going there at one time. And I think that was a feather in Greg's cap, was he grabbed the girls side of it and ran with it and turned it into what it is today. And now they do almost as many girls as boys.
We do a lot, and thankfully we're blessed in girls sports just like we are in boys sports, with a lot of good teams and a lot of communities. And so it's never a problem trying to choose a good game. It's separating the best game. It's trying to determine what we think will be the best contest. And
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you guys can both speak to, is that it's one thing to get into broadcasting sports and enjoying that. And I think that I know all you guys well enough to know that you'd like it no matter who was playing. But around here, we don't just get to take whatever comes to us. Like, we've got our choices of a ton of great schools and programs to cover, and that makes this area, makes it all that much better, and something you can stick with for maybe decades.
Exactly so. And it's been fun we don't have to hype a game because they're good, and folks watch or listen to a game, because we do some of both, but mostly listen to a game with a sense of anticipation that they know it's going to be a good ball game. And it's a blast when Larry and Greg can be there to do that game. That was fun back then. And now it's you and me, or you and Matt, or me and Matt, or us and Mike, or whoever the combination is. We still have great programs and great kids. And we are blessed to be able to do high school sports around here. We were then, we still are now.
So I don't know, what are some basketball moments that stick out in your mind? I mean, tell me something that when I'm sure you get asked this all the time, and I mean, tell me one of the answers that you come up with when someone asks you something like that. Like, what sticks out in your mind as far as great basketball games that you've gone and covered?
Well, out of 2,500 or so, that's kind of hard to pick a few. But one thing stands out is the first time Effingham went to the state tournament, and we were in the assembly hall, and Effingham's game time came up, and they walked out on the floor like they didn't have a care in the world. That was a Jim Maxidon trait. You don't run out and clap hands and form a big circle and do things like that. They just sauntered out onto the court and started their warm-ups and their game. But that was a real thrill for me to actually see a hometown team on the assembly hall floor. I can remember that. Of course, there were many games to follow and many trips up there with other teams. But the first one's always probably the best and one you really remember.
Larry had a chance to go in '68 with a tremendous ball club, and then we got to go at the end of the 79-80 season when Effingham got to play, and we got to see Mitch Arnold and Dale Groupie and Uwe and Steve Bushu and Doug and let's see, Brad Neat and Jim Shadowins and Dallas Orsborn and all these people that Mike went to school with. That's why he can rip it off. And all these guys, and it was just phenomenal, the talent that those teams had, and they just beat teams, and it was phenomenal. And that was so great to have an opportunity to go there. And I hadn't been that long since I'd been out of high school, and I went to high school at Effingham. And that was just a thrill to get to broadcast your hometown team at the state tournament. And
state championship game.
Yes, the state championship game. Effingham and Chicago Manly, and Russell Cross played for Manly, and of course he went on to play at Purdue and then went on to play for the Golden State Warriors. And Uwe, of course, played for Indiana and then played for Dallas and San Antonio. And so these guys that went on to play in the NBA, for crying out loud. Mitch Arnold went on and went to Illinois for a while and then went out to Fresno State, was the all-time career assist leader at Fresno State, which has played some pretty good basketball through the years.
And won an NIT.
And won an NIT, played on. Mitch, if you're watching this, one of my favorite stories about Mitch, he said after they played in the NIT in the championship, he says, yeah, I spit on the floor at Madison Square Garden and I spit on the floor at the Watson Civic Center.
Talking about Uwe, you know, when Uwe was here, both years were a circus, absolute circus, because he was a phenomenon, and no matter where we went, well, home games sold out in the old gym. It wasn't hard to sell them out in the old gym locally, and very few of the opposing team's fans could get in because Effingham fans just jammed the gym. But when the Hearts would go on the road and Uwe was a big thing, there were some unique situations. I know it's probably Greg and I one time walked into the gym at Cumberland. They played at Cumberland, and I can't remember. I've looked for the score.
Wouldn't have been at Cumberland.
Wouldn't have been. It was somewhere over in that area. They played a game, and Greg and I walked in the gym early because we always get there early, like Whitey knows. And there wasn't a vacant seat, and it was 6 o'clock, and the JV game didn't start till 6:30, and there wasn't a seat to be had at 6. We walked in and we shoehorned our way into 2 seats at the scorer's table where they had our phone line hooked up where we were to be to broadcast. But that was just happened everywhere you went. Went to Greenville, I remember. Went to Greenville. I think I was by myself that night at Greenville.
Well, I was there, but
But
maybe it was like you were by yourself. Because you know why I remember? Because that's the night Larry Wilson got to interview Digger Phelps.
Oh,
Yeah.
Digger Phelps was at their spot. I think probably Mitch, maybe Uwe.
Oh, it's Uwe.
He was watching Uwe.
And Larry got to talk to him at halftime.
oh,
They had the only place and another gym that was so crowded, there was no place for us. So back in the corner of a lot of gymnasiums, they have little storage sheds in the corner of the gyms. Well, up on top of that storage shed is where we sat to do the broadcast. It wasn't a broadcast booth. It was just on top of the storage shed.
It was inside though.
And we get up there, and who's sitting up there in the chair by himself? Digger Phelps watching. That's where they put him to watch Scout Uwe. And I know we got there, we sat there and we talked, and he said, yeah, he'd be a guest at halftime. But a funny situation, I tell this story, happened in that game. Greenville had kids had the front row on their side of the floor. And at one point in the game, Effingham was winning probably by 40 points. But anyway, some kid threw a rubber chicken out into the floor during the game. A rubber chicken like they use as a prop, you know, magician or somebody would use it. Well, this rubber chicken come flying out on the floor, and they call time. And the referee goes to pick it up, and the kid's got it on a rod and reel. And this guy bends over to pick up the chicken, and this kid reels the chicken back into the sideline. And the gym went nuts. And it was just something because Uwe was there. Somebody wanted to grab the spotlight, but that was a night we remember. And then I went to Hillsboro one night. We were sitting in halfway up in the bleachers in a little corner to broadcast the game. And we were sitting there, and about halfway through the game, things started hitting us. People, their hometown Hillsboro students were up behind us, and all at once we started getting pelted with
Skittles, as I
Skittles.
recall.
Skittles. They were throwing Skittles at us. They were throwing Skittles at us just all the time, bouncing off of us all the time we're trying to broadcast. But the good news was Uwe laid 55 on them that night. 55 points that night at Greenville. So that's one of the things I remember that happened. But it was a circus everywhere you went. No matter what school you went to, it was a jam-packed place. And the Hearts played good basketball and was entertaining. And we were at Pana. We were on the back row at Pana, and crowded, and Uwe was the star, of course, and we were at Pana, and I happened to be sitting next to Bob Falstrom from the Decatur Herald. Bob was in his prime, and he would cover high school sports, and he liked the Effingham team with Uwe. It was a sight to behold as far as he was concerned. So he personally covered a lot of Effingham's games that year with Uwe and Mitch and the good team they had. We were at Pana, and in that same week we're at Pana, I believe it was Daryl Dawkins, as I recall, the pro basketball player who broke the backboard. Remember, was he the one that shattered the backboard with a dunk?
He was the first one, yeah.
I believe he was the first player to shatter a backboard, a glass backboard, and they called him Chocolate Thunder. Remember that?
Yes.
Called him Chocolate Thunder.
Right, he does it. Daryl Dawkins.
I know what you're talking about. Come on.
Mon Paul Dawkins.
So anyway, Uwe slammed one home and the crowd went nuts. I mean, he got up and he ripped it home, and Bob Falstrom says, "What do you call that, Larry?" And I said, "That's sauerkraut thunder."
That was actually Uwe's senior year. And if I remember right, that's the night, that may have been on Valentine's Day, because Pana went to state in 1A that year when we went in 2A, Uwe's senior year, and they were good. And the students all had these T-shirts, "Break Their Hearts, St. Valentine's Day Massacre." And Uwe put on a show that night, and we beat them pretty good. And we may or may not have been chased out of the gym by the principal from Payne at the end of that game, a group of students from Effingham who tended to get excited at games. And I don't know, I'd have to,
And I know it's been 40 years and I should let this go, but shockingly, it wasn't long after that Effingham was no longer a member of the Mid-State Conference. Cause and effect? Hey, I don't know.
I've never heard you bring it up before, Greg. I've never heard you bring it up.
Greg remembers a football game at Pana one night.
Oh yeah.
He was, I was doing the play-by-play, and I think Stan was helping me, but we took Greg along.
As a spotter.
As a spotter. He was going to help us with the broadcast. And we had permission from the principal at Pana to broadcast the game. And we got up into their dinky press box. and we all three sat down to do our job. And the principal came in and he said, "I told you could bring 2 people to this broadcast, not 3.
I can give names if you want me to."
And Greg says, "Well, I'm just helping." The guy says, "You're going to help from down there." And he kicked Greg out of the press box and allowed only 2 people at the Pana football game. But it was a dinky press box, and we were elbow to elbow. But we thought we were going to get 3 people in,
But the best laid plans.
Yeah. But that principal's no longer with us.
Basketball season, of course, happens during the winter, and so travel can be interesting. I'm curious if there's any good stories about getting to a game or maybe getting home from a game, having to do with road conditions that you guys might have stuck with you through the years.
This precedes me, but it's too good a story not for him to tell. You and Jack Hightower on Route 128.
Back in the day when they had district tournaments, basketball started with district, then regional, then sectional, then state. There was a district tournament at Cowden High School. Had a district tournament, and St. Anthony played in it. They got assigned to that district, and Jack and I went up and broadcast St. Anthony's game in the district that night. And there was snowstorm warnings out, but we thought it would not come till after our broadcast. Well, we were wrong. I had a little black Pontiac Tempest with a stick shift, front wheel drive.
I don't even remember this.
A little black Tempest, and it could hardly pull the hat off your head, So we head home from Cowden, and we step out of that gym, and there's already probably 8 inches of snow on the ground. It came quick and blowing. It was officially a blizzard, I would say. Oh, it was the snow blowing. Well, we got in the car and we headed down 128. And as you cross there hadn't been a snow plow on the highway. I was going by highline poles and trees to know where the center of the road was, because you couldn't tell. But you just had to guess, and no one had preceded us to break a path. No snow plow had been on. And we're going about 12 miles an hour down the road. So we get to the Great River Bridge there east of Cowden, goes across the Kaskaskia. And Jack's keeping snow off the windshield as best he can, reaching out, because it was so blowing so bad the wipers would hardly keep it clean. And we crossed the bridge, you could see the railings, and I said, well, Jack, there's a big hill here. I'm going to kind of speed it up and make sure we get to the top of this hill. And so we went up the hill, and all at once, ka-thunk, ka-thunk, I had to stop. I'd hit something. I'd gone up the left side off the road and up the left embankment. And Jack says, where in the hell are we? I said, Jack, we're not quite up the hill yet. So I put it in reverse, and we back out slowly into the road, and I put it in gear, and away, believe it or not, the front wheel traction, we got up the hill, top of the hill. And this was before they'd widened it. Remember, now it's wide because people hit so many deer there that they ended up widening it, so drivers at least had a chance against the deer. But this was before they even widened that stretch through there. It was narrow, and I went right up the side, left side, not the right side. I went up the left side, which means I had to cross in front of oncoming traffic. So we get up the hill, and then you could see a little better up there in the open prairie, and you could see the high lines, so we made it finally to Beecher City. And we stopped in Beecher City under a street light and got out and cleaned the snow off because the wipers had frozen the snow. It was terrible, just most terrible driving conditions you can imagine. And all the while the wind's blowing at probably 35, 40 mile an hour. So we creep our way back from Beecher City. It's a little better. There'd been a snow plow from Beecher City to Effingham. So we could kind of see where the road was, and the track had been made. And we pulled into Effingham. The lights, of the town showed up, and we made it to the station and unloaded the equipment and went home. And, we just thanked our lucky stars. We could have been lost out there somewhere in the blizzard. But when I went up that hill, and ka-thunk, ka-thunk, and she went up the embankment.
Go ahead, finish.
Well, that was that. There was another story coming home from a football game is about as bad, but it didn't have anything to do with snow, but it was a dangerous situation.
Why do you know one person at this table always claims that when snowflakes get big, it's going to quit snowing? All right.
The big flake theory.
The big flake theory. That's Jasper County theory. NTC tournament, because I'm probably 10, 11, 12 years old, maybe older than that, because Greg may have been there. But we go over, and, the NTC, you're going to have the championship game, come hell or high water, because that's the game. And it's just, we get to the gym early because I rode over, and I think Sam may have decided to ride with you because the weather was bad, so he didn't want to drive by himself. And I don't know if it was Greg or if it was Stan or whomever, and it's snowing. And as we get to Altamont, it really starts snowing big flakes. And Sam looks at Dad and he says, Wilson, my theory better be right. These flakes are getting pretty big. Don't worry. Flakes are big. It's going to quit. Well, you're in the gym, hour before the game, all the awards, everybody gets hugged and handshake. We walk out that door, and there's about 8 or 9 inches of snow, and the flakes are still big. And Sam just, he lights on, pops up. Guy, he said, well, it is about to stop.
The story was that, yes, he said it was going to stop, and 18 inches later, he was right.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, in snow, some of these gyms, when they'd have their antennas, you'd have to, I think it's a Cowden, you had to go out on the roof, open that window and go out on the roof of the gym and or in the
Brownstown.
building.
Brownstown.
It's at Brownstown.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, little Mikey was the guy that got to go out on the roof in the snow.
Set up
He
the
kept
antenna.
saying, get it closer to the edge. I thought, you know, this line's not going to hold me if I go over the edge. Bob. So, yeah, that was a bad thing about going in with them. You had to go out and on the roof sometimes in climactic weather.
One time at the NTC used to be notorious for lousy weather. It was like God decided that last week of January, it was always going to be lousy weather at least 2 or 3 days of the NTC tournament. And all you folks that are watching this that are NTC fans, you know I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
And we got in there one night and it was fine. And we came out and it had iced. Remember that night it iced?
Yes.
We went over to the interstate and drove home at 10. I vouch, 10 miles an hour on I-70 on the way home. It was awful. And we probably should have just stayed at Altamont, but we got home.
Now, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but I've heard tell, and I don't even know if this involves two of you guys together or not, but somebody's got a story to tell because Greg, I've heard tell of Greg talking about getting pulled over for speeding somewhere.
That
Yeah.
would have been me.
Yeah. Here's the story.
Yeah, this will be better if you tell it about Greg getting pulled over.
It will be better.
I'll tell the real story. This is the rest of the story.
Mount Carmel story?
No, this is
Oh,
a
okay.
Salem Invitational.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Salem Invitational. If a tournament's set up that if you play on Saturday at 12:30 or 11 o'clock for the semifinals of something, then you win, then you come back and play at 8 o'clock at night or something. It was a long stretch between games, you know. So Greg and I decided that Effingham had played at 11:30 in the morning and won, so they were going to play in the 7 o'clock game at night.
That's how it always works.
So we don't need to be staying in Salem that long. Let's go home and get a nap and then come back, you know. So we're going back to Salem.
Actually, we're going home
Home from Salem to Effingham.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, we're breezing through Alma, the big town of Alma. We're breezing right on through.
Think about that.
I said, well, look, Greg, there it says Alma Elevator, Alma Cafe. Oh, look, the Alma Park. Oh, look, the Alma gas station. Everything said Alma this, Alma that. And then I said, oh, Greg, look, the Alma police. Here he was behind us with his lights on. He pulled us over. Oh, Greg rolls down the window. Officer, how are you? Or something. And then what?
And then he said, you're speeding. And I said, by golly, you're right. No sense lying about it. So I got a ticket going through Alma on a Saturday afternoon. Now, I'm just wanting to show of hands out there. How many of you ever had that happen to you? I'm guessing not many. But yeah, that was but the best story we ever got in, I think, hands down, as far as this sort of stuff, was we were on our way to Mount Carmel. I think we had a sectional game to do. And
First time ever Effingham had been assigned to that section.
And it was a case where we wanted to make sure we got there and did this game. And one of us, we'd gotten down the road a ways, and one of us had forgotten a piece of equipment. I don't remember how far we'd gotten. We were somewhere between Dietrich and Newton, I think. And so we had to turn around and go back because we couldn't broadcast without this piece of equipment. So we went back, got the piece of equipment, and we're trying to make pretty good time. And if the wind's just right, you can zip right on down Route 33. And again, some of you know that. And we got into Wayne County, and we were navigating our way through Wayne County, and we got on this road, and I don't know which legislator did it, but somebody got some really good vote totals from their constituents the next time they had an election, because this was like the interstate.
Yeah.
And it's a road in Wayne County. Plex, if you're watching, I apologize. But, and we're doing pretty good time. And an officer from the Wayne County Sheriff's Office came up behind us and stopped us. And yeah, we were speeding, and really nice fella came up and said, well, boys are moving along pretty good there. I said, yes, well, we had to go back to Effingham and get a piece of equipment. Otherwise we couldn't broadcast, and we're trying to make our way to the game, you know, and it's a big game, postseason and everything. Well, he was a basketball fan, so he understood. And so he said, tell you what, get behind me. Well, whoom, he went, and so whoom went I, and we're just eyeballing it through Wayne County, and he whoops us up in front of the gym
in
Mount Carmel, which is in some county down there, and right to the front door, and he says, is there anything else I can do for you? And I said, no, sir, we're fine now. He said, well, have a great evening, and off he went. I don't think I got a raise.
Well, listen, we need to find like some friendly state police officer that wants to give us that treatment, so we can leave for all the football games. Like we could save ourselves at least a half. Like we can get down to Breeze in like a half hour or something like that.
Exactly right. And I know Whitey was proud of me this football season because I turned at the right spot to go to Breeze this year. We've had a few side trips.
Yeah, you know, I have got a feeling that those kind of things back before we were carrying cell phones around with GPS in them, situation like that might have turned sideways pretty quick. You guys ever get lost going somewhere?
We went somewhere, and I didn't. It wasn't Larry's fault. It was my fault. I don't know where we were going, but it was, yes, is the answer. But we never missed a ball game. And I think that's the tradition. I think we still never have not gotten a ball game on. We've had to be a little creative.
Yeah.
I remember one night Wayne Rubach and I went to do a girls game in Sullivan, and that's when T-Town was just in their glory years, and Sullivan had these great teams too. The Clayton girl played for Sullivan. She's a wonderful player. They had a great ball club, and we got there and didn't have a phone line. Thought we were gonna, and we didn't. So I remember Wayne, sorry, we're jumping off Greg and Larry here for a second. We ran phone cord from the door leading into the gym down the hall into the principal's office and hooked up there. And Wayne, meanwhile, was sitting up in the top of the bleachers, and he'd give me hand and arm signals and fouls on her, and he'd hold up 2 fingers. That's her second foul. It's the team's 5th foul. You know what I mean? So we did the game by hand and arm signals, but we never have not gotten a game on.
Same thing happened at Marshall one time. Remember
That, when we had to climb up the,
I was at the top of the bleachers and you was in the coach's office because there was only room for one person up at the booth, and that was me, and I had the equipment, and Greg was keeping score down at in the the door of the coach's office at the end of the floor, and he was giving me the hand signals. We did that game at Marshall. I remember the only time I ever did a game at Marshall, I believe.
I believe that is right.
Got one more trip story.
Okay.
If you got time.
Oh, go for it.
Greg and I were going to Paris one night to do it had to be a basketball game because it was dark early. It wasn't football, it was basketball. Foggy night, going to Paris. Greg's got a habit of not slowing down in fog. I mean, what fog? You know, Greg, way he goes, you know, in the fog, and I'm saying, boy, maybe we better slow down a little bit. Here we are up north of Marshall. We're on Route 1, and it's deer season. And we're going in the fog, and sure enough, up ahead of us, somebody had hit a deer and hadn't cleared the road yet. It was still in the road. Greg, we better. What did we just run over? oh my God, we hit a deer. Yeah, Greg said, yeah, but it was already dead. I said, well, that don't mean you had to hit it. I thought sure antlers were going to come up my skirt, man. I'm telling you, he ran over that thing, just ka-thump, ka-thump. And he gets on the phone, 911, 911. Yes, sir. What's your request? And Greg said, well, I'd want to report a dead deer at the zone about 8 miles north of Marshall. Yeah, we've had a lot of reports of that deer. A lot of people have hit that deer. I said, yeah, yes, they have. Add another to the list.
Thankfully, the car was intact.
Yeah.
Not so much for the deer.
I don't know, Mike, what do you got? Any direction you want to lead this? You know, we've got a little time left.
Lost. There's times when I was just starting out coaching under Dave Bartlett, and I'd have to go scout. I'd ask Dad, how do you get to Danville Schlarman's gym? Well, you go to the Danville. Once you see the Steak and Shake, you take every direction involved a restaurant. It always involved a restaurant. So, you know, I'd always use his directions, and I always got where I had to be. Well, I took him with me. He must be the good luck penny. We went to
It was out in the country.
it was they used to be consolidated. It was milk, not it was CPI. Oh
Yeah, CPA.
yeah, they went to state a couple years ago. Now they're back. I can't remember, but we're going to go scout. I'm scouting, so I go up there, and they were playing. Gosh, I can't remember, but they were famous for, you know, they always held the ball. They'd get a big lead and go four corners and hold the ball. I said, Dad, let's go scouting. I know it's north up there, just north of Rantoul. So I keep thinking, this again before you got your phone and GPS, and this is him co-piloting. We just kind of go north of Rantoul about an X and a half. We'll turn and find it. And usually, you know, Greg mentioned you see the lights of the town.
Paxton, Buckley, Loda.
No, not them, but it's a real
Another
small
consolidated.
Okay.
Yeah. There's not a light anywhere on the prairie. Nothing. There's not a town big enough to illuminate a light you can see on the horizon. So we're just driving. So finally we walk into this gym.
Finally found it.
Halftime. I mean, and it was almost halftime. And it's like an E.F. Hutton commercial. I mean, this place was packed, and everyone in the building's staring at us. We walk in, kind of sat down, you know, and then by 3 minutes in the third quarter, they go into their four-corner stall, and I'm like, well, okay, I know what they're going to do. I'm not going to sit here and watch 10 minutes. So we were there we saw probably 4 or 5 minutes of basketball, but we spent about an hour driving around the middle of nowhere.
That's exactly right.
Trying to find it.
No,
CPCI, Cissna Park, Iroquois, and whatever that other I was.
No road signs,
No nothing.
no road markers to tell you where you were. We drove until we finally found a town. Luckily it was it.
You know, you mentioned the rubber chicken. What's maybe one of the strangest things you've seen in a game?
Well, remember at Centralia, what ended up on the floor?
Oh, the knife.
Yes,
A butter knife. Because I know the person who threw it.
it was still a knife.
It was a knife.
Yeah, it was a sectional game, I think.
Yeah.
And Effingham and Centralia occasionally didn't like each other a whole lot. And we were ready for the game. I don't think the game had started. It was pregame. And all of a sudden, clank, 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 clank out on the floor. There's a knife out there. Well, that got our attention. And the gendarmes were called. And as I recall, the Effingham buses got an escort out of town that night.
The Effingham students, because I wasn't allowed to go to the game, somebody was anticipating problems. I was still in junior high, so I wasn't allowed to go. And all the Effingham students turned and pointed because a lot of the Centralia students or alumni were sitting right behind them. And they cleared that part of the gym out because a member of Effingham student body at the time finally told me that, yes, was the one that threw the butter on the floor.
Now,
I'm not going to mention his name, but
now the game had, if I can remember, if that's the same game, we were on the south end or the end of the gym floor on a stage. And
This is the old Centralia gym,
yeah, this is the old Centralia gym.
not the Palace now.
And it was a tie ball game right down, a real
Now,
close
this was the
game.
Jeff Webb game.
Who?
Wasn't Jeff Webb the one that hit the shot at the
Well,
buzzer?
anyway, here's what happened. The game got real close at the end and was a tie. And Centralia had the ball and the kid inbounded and he threw it the length of the floor trying to hit a teammate, and it didn't hit anybody, which meant the ball came back to this end where the play started, and Effingham had the ball right under their own basket. And they got the inbounds play, and the shot, whoever shot it won the ball game. But the kid threw it to the length of the floor and missed a teammate, and it worked out great for Effingham. They got the ball right under the basket, put in a game-winning shot, and Effingham beat Centralia.
A member of that Centralia team was Tim Jackson from Effingham, who later was one of my assistant coaches. He's not too fond of the outcome of that game, by the way. But yeah, that was I want to say it was Jeff Webb hit a buzzer beater from like the corner, and you guys were going nuts on the radio.
It was exciting, to say the least.
Now, was the coach, Centralia coach, would that have been
Carlin, Rich Carlin.
Jeff
Carlin? Jeff Carling, maybe? He created quite a firestorm anyway, so,
Well,
I mean,
he
as a
showed up
coach.
at Centralia, he wasn't going to be at the game. There was a death in the family. And so Salem tournament, gyms packed, places, going nuts pregame. Well, Carlin's not going to be there. Woe is us. And those doors that are under that balcony at Salem go out into that ticket lobby. And about 2 minutes before the tip, I mean, all of a sudden 2 doors spring open and Carlin comes running in and the place is up for grabs. And that's the game Effingham beat them. And I remember they're carrying Maxon around waving a red towel. It was nuts. I mean, there was some, and you talk about these guys doing big games. Yeah, some tremendous high school games.
Carling's darlings. When we got started, I hate, you touched on this at the start, I think, Whitey, but the first year we did basketball together full time was 77, 78. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that was the year that St. Anthony, Bob Tingley's St. Anthony team went to state, finished in the Final Four. And it was so exciting. And I remember, this is legit. I looked at Larry and, as naive as I was then, said, man, do we get to do this every year? And there for a while, we about got to do it every year. Because it was an amazing run.
Is that the year the game got postponed?
Yep, till Thursday afternoon.
Because of the snowstorm?
Yep.
Yeah.
And the snow on the interstate, you had to dodge the piles of snow because the road crews couldn't get it all off. It froze. And they had snow in piles actually on the interstate, but you drove around the snow on your way to Charleston. And wow.
Yeah, played a Thursday afternoon in Charleston. Came back to Effingham, had chicken in the parish. I remember you interviewed Bob Tingley with blood on his shirt from the official who got punched after the game, and then turned around, drove to Champaign, and played the next day in Champaign, played the first game in the state tournament.
Yeah. As I recall, that was Ron Michelson.
Yes.
And Ron Michelson later went on to become the director of the Illinois State Board of Elections. So he had pretty good reach. And what had happened? Well, should we tell the whole story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so it's the super sectional. I mean, it's a big deal. And who did
Lebanon.
Lebanon. I knew someone in Metro. St. Anthony played Lebanon, and the game was just nip and tuck. It was a great ball game. And finally, we got to the end, and it looked like St. Anthony might lose because they didn't have the ball, and it was that close. And so Scott Cabas, who even then was one of the smartest people I knew, and he was 18 years old,
Took a charge.
And they had made a point of telling the official, okay, now I'm going to be playing defense here. So if the guy goes down the floor to receive a pass, there could be some contact. So be watching. Well, Scott didn't care about whether he was going to get knocked in next week or not, planted himself. And the kid, they were going to throw fast break, throw the ball down the floor. Kid was going to streak down there, get it, and no chance for St. Anthony to score, and Lebanon would win. Except this kid ran over Scott, might have knocked him clear past the half line, and the official had the guts to call it. Made the call, and that got the ball to St. Anthony, and St. Anthony went ahead.
Scott made free throws,
free
put
throw.
it in overtime with like 1 second something on the clock, and then they won in overtime, and Lebanon crowd storms the floor, St. Anthony crowd storms the floor, and it was a melee.
And one of the fathers of a player for Lebanon slugged the official.
Okay, I was going to say that was going to be my follow-up question. Was the bloody official the one who made the charging call?
Yes, and there are and speaking of charges, there were charges filed in that.
I imagine so. I don't know. That's
Into the locker room, drug Michelson into the locker room, got him out of the melee because he got clocked pretty good.
Mm-hmm. It was a remarkable play, and I guess I should maybe, Bob, if you're watching, maybe Bob Tingley, he's a pretty sharp guy. He might have set up the play, but my understanding was Scott was, well, who else would you rather have? There's smart mind like him, and great foul shooter too. And he took the charge, and St. Anthony won the game. It was just quite a night.
so Greg, I wanted to get this in. We try to keep it around an hour, so I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. But I wanted to give you this opportunity to say this. You talked in the beginning, about doing play-by-play and not being real confident in it at first. But tell me something that you picked up from working with and listening to Larry that you have carried with you, from then until now.
Well, let me make sure I say this well. I've always said, you've heard me say that everything good that I learned about radio, I learned from Larry.
I have heard you say that.
And I maintain that. And he was such a great inspiration. And, I have my moments, and Larry just always maintained his calm, great demeanor. I mean, he got excited at ball games, sure, but never in a negative way. And he tried to instill that in me, still let me be me, and I appreciate that, but taught me a lot about how to do a game, how to get ready for a game, stats and things like that. And you're the best at football stats of anybody I know.
Yeah.
And
basketball.
and he helped me with that. I remember when we started keeping rebounds. Boy, we thought we had landed on the moon because we kept makes and misses, foul shots and free throws, or foul shots and field goals. And I said, I think I can keep track of rebounds too. He said, well, give it a shot. So we added that. And, well, Whitey keeps assists and all that stuff.
He now does offensive and defensive.
Yeah,
He rubs it in.
I know he does.
Joe Blow was in the game 4 minutes and 2 seconds before he took him out,
The offensive rebounds, I got to tell you, that's because at the newspaper, Kurt Becker would always turn in his stories and talk about offensive rebounds. And I was like, well, if Kurt can do it, I can try and do it. And so I got into the habit of keeping them for the newspaper. And so that just kind of stuck with me.
I want to give a shout out to another Candace. Dad used to sometimes, I would have to keep rebounds. And at a St. Anthony game one time, probably about 12 years old, Craig Cavis kept rebounds for you. And then you had Craig come on and you made him read the totals on the air.
Yeah.
And you still laugh to this day.
Yeah.
Well, how did he do it?
Well, Craig, bless his heart, did a great job. And I'd say, what was the totals, Craig? And he said, well, Newton had 14 rebounds and St. Anthony had 12 rebounds. I said, who? He said, St. Anthony. Okay, well, I tell him that when I see him today, and he'll say, yeah, and you were nice enough, you didn't say anything about it on the air. You didn't make fun of me on the air either.
Oh man. it's fun to see how so many of these folks that we worked with through the years have gone on to fame and fortune and success. Craig's certainly one of them, but a lot of people that we've been blessed to get to work with. Let me give a shout out to all the secretaries, because we know who is the power behind the throne. If I ever need any information, I know who to call, and they are fabulous people. But all the athletic directors and coaches and kids, think how many kids we've had a chance to do games. It's amazing. And they can remember that their year or two or three, if they were really good, or four, a few. That's so neat to have had a chance to be a part of their time in high school. And I hope we always made it that much more special.
Yeah. People always ask and say, hey, Larry, who was the best basketball player you ever saw? I get that so much. And I'd give an answer, and then they'd say, well, how about Totopoulos? Well, I like so-and-so, but what about something, they all have their own ideas of who's the best. They kind of want you to say that name, but hey, we did a lot more Effingham and St. Anthony games than we did area kids, but we still got to see the area kids, but not near as much. So the game we saw them play might not have been their best game. And this person saw them play their best game, and they think they should be the best you ever saw. It's tough to pick out the best because, like Greg said, how in the world, how many kids did we see over the course of a year, years and years? And I did 41 years of it, and you do about, counting tournaments and the regular season, about 70 games a year for 41 years. That's a lot of games, And things changed over the course. We used to have to order the phone lines from the phone company to be installed in the gymnasium. And that was fun because sometimes you never knew where they left your hookup at and you had to search for it.
But shout out to all the phone company people who did that too.
Yeah, Bob and Jack Arnold were great at helping us get those lines in because they liked basketball and they wanted to hear the game. So they would make sure we had lines back in the day when we had them. Then we went to bag phones. I like bag phones and little antenna you carried with you back when cell towers first started. And you could get a signal on your magnetic antenna. We'd put it up as high as possible and then run it through the bag phone. And then they finally went, as I was retiring, went to cell phones. And guys, cell phones in the beginning were so lousy because they weren't made for a crowd.
Right.
Cell phones would pick up all of the crowd noise and the cheerleaders, but not the announcers. And cell phones were so bad at the beginning, but you couldn't use a bag phone or a regular phone line. You had to use a cell. And the first cell phones were not made for that. Well, now they have, like Greg knows and Whitey knows, they have special equipment now that they've designed to use with your cell phone that makes it sound really good. But at the beginning, they were really crappy, and people would complain and say, I wanted to hear the game, but I couldn't make out heads or tails of what you were talking about. So it was quite a transition to go from the analog, which was a bag phone, to cell. But now they've perfected the equipment to the point where cells are good. And you can do a game now anywhere or remote anywhere. Back in the day, you couldn't do that. So Larry, equipment's come a long way.
Larry, I hope, I've always thought that if I ever got it, I've never gotten the chance to work with you. So, if you're ever up for it.
We did a girls game, didn't we?
Did we?
We did a girls game at St. Anthony, I believe, or a boys game. One game I worked with you.
Okay.
You did the play-by and I botched the color. So.
Well, see, I'm even getting to the point now where I guess the years start to run together a little bit. So
I did one game with you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then scratch that. Maybe we'll remove that in post. Actually, there's no way. I'm not savvy enough to do that. But yeah, I don't know, unless if there's anything else that you guys feel like you need to share while we're sharing. I don't know if we've got any parting shots to get in.
I got a picture here I want to show you. This
Okay, let's see it.
it's not the real man cave like Larry had, my dad has, but this is you know, 2 Hall of Famers and a future Hall of Famer, and they all have hair. But
So-
Greg, that's what you had. You said your horse blanket coat.
My horse blanket, yeah.
So what's the story there? What's the story there?
Affiliates.
It was Cardinal Affiliates Day, and the station where we used to work is a Cardinal affiliate, and so the owner, boss, let us go one time together. And so we went down there, and Jack Buck, as he always was gracious and kind and wonderful guy who probably met 8 million people in his life and was nice enough to stand still for a picture with 2 more guys. And I just remember how nice he was. Like it was a big deal for him to talk to 2 guys from Effingham.
And I have a picture in my basement or man cave, as Mike said, with when Affiliates Day, except my wife Patsy and I went down. And
She did not wear that jacket.
we went down and the Affiliates Day, and we were nice enough to have breakfast that Thursday morning, and with all these celebrities, and we got a group picture taken, and it's Dan Kelly, who used to be the voice of the blues before he passed away, Lou Brock, Stan Musial, Mike Shannon, and Jack Buck. My wife and I are there with these 5 people, and
Wow.
that's one photograph I really, really treasure.
I imagine so. Well, guys, I appreciate you taking the time. Sports fans in this area would listen to this for an hour every week, way before they'd want to hear what Mike and I have to say. So I think this is a treat for them to hear you guys reminisce, and somewhere down the road we'll have to do it again. But yeah, with the basketball season getting ready to go in the area for another year, who better to talk to than you two? Kind of basketball in Effingham County and Greg Sapp and Larry Wilson, they just kind of go together. So appreciate you taking the time. Mike, you got anything else you want to throw in here, or should we sign it off?
No, I mean, I know we had a couple of our kids go to run cross country at Detweiler, and I think had some great times. I think Griffin Elder from Santee may have ran a personal best up there. You know, I think everything else now is it's like the county is just like daylight savings times. It's dark. You're kind of have one eye closed on your recliner, and that's all going to change next week once basketball starts, because, you know, this area is very in tune to its high school basketball, both boys and girls. And, you know, you and I talked, Dustin, we thought this would be a nice kickoff to basketball season. And yeah, I think it was very good. Many of these stories I've heard multiple times, and I still had to dab a tear from my eye. I was laughing back here, but yeah,
There's more stories.
Yeah, you ride with these guys through the dark of night through South Central Illinois. You hear all kinds of things, and
I can imagine.
it was quite education I had.
Well, you know, at some point, a few more of those stories will have to come to light. We'll do this again sometime, as long as everybody's willing to. But you know, until then, you know, again, girls practice has been going for a week in the area. They're going to be playing games before you know it. Thanksgiving's right around the corner, and then Greg's going to be a busy man, and probably the rest of us too. So we'll be trying to. I think we're going to make an effort to get some of the local the county coaches to come and talk with us before their seasons get too far down the road. So be looking forward to that. And again, you know, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this and you enjoyed it, you know, make sure you let us know and let your friends know. You know, we're still doing this kind of grassroots word of mouth, and get a few more views every week. So let's keep that going. We appreciate everyone who takes the time to take us in And hopefully that viewership number will keep going as the basketball season gets rolling. So again, thanks to Larry Wilson and Greg Sapp for joining us. Mike, got something?
I subscribe. I had some, and it is free. You're not paying a Yahoo.
Yeah.
YouTube subscription. It's just, but again, those numbers get us our own URL where eventually people can easily find us.
Yeah, that's key. Yeah, you go on YouTube and press that little subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a click of a button. It'll tell you every time we put a new episode out, and you can come check it out. So again, I think that's going to do it for this week. Thanks again to Larry and Greg for taking the time to join us, and we'll be back with you in about a week. So again, thanks for listening, and until then, have a great week and be getting ready for that basketball season. Thanks, everybody.